Testing 1, 2, 3. Good evening, folks. Welcome to tonight's council meeting for Monday, December the 18th. This will be our last council meeting of the year. So I know we'll have a very good council meeting and lots of interesting discussions tonight. So I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. The lands we know today as the Township of Centre Wellington have been home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We acknowledge that we are on the treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee, with increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the Township of Centre Wellington. The Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee could not continue the traditional lifestyle and settled in their villages along the Credit River and in the Grand River Valley. These Indigenous nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Centre Wellington remains home to Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations. Okay, addendums and corrections to the agenda. There was no closed session tonight. It was canceled, and the subject matter was will be referred to council meeting on January the 15th. So nothing with that regard. In that regard. Now we're at number 4, disclosure of pecuniary interests under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I have a conflict of interest with the Fergus BIA budget and the levy request, as I'm an owner of a business and a building in the Fergus catchment area. And also due to my conflict of interest regarding the Fergus BIA, I would ask council for a motion to accept the Fergus BIA budget as presented so that I am able to vote on the overall 2024 budget as part of the Committee of the Whole report. Thank you.
And we're going to do that now then? Sure. Okay, and you're who's going to present that motion on? Sorry, on that. Oh, sorry.
Just
yeah.
Ask for a movement.
Yep. Sorry. Do you have okay? That Council of the Township of Centre Wellington accept the 2024 Fergus BIA budget as presented. To have a mover for that, Councillor Levoy, a seconder on that, Councillor McDonald. All those in favor? So moved. You can come back. Okay. I also have conflict of interest as it relates to my involvement with Riverfest. We have an office at the Laura Centre for the Arts, and I know there's an item in the Committee of the Whole for related to 15 and 16, and then at that time I'll step aside. So any other notice of conflicts of interest? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 8, Committee of the Whole, September the 11th, 2023 minutes. We have a recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole held on September the 11th, 2023, and the public meeting under the Planning Act held to October 25th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Ivor, seconder on that. Councillor Wilton. Any comments, questions as it relates to those notice of motions? Nope. All those in favor?
Minutes.
Oh, sorry, minutes. Sorry. Yes. So moved. Presentation and announcements. We were to have artist Tim Merton. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to attend because he's not feeling well. But if you notice, his pieces are on the back, and Tim has been a long-term artist in the community and done all kinds of interesting things. Monster Month, and he's a well-regarded and an individual which we should all be very proud that he lives in our community. So Okay, we're moving down to item 9.2, Mayor's County Council report. Really not much to report. It's been very quiet. We just came out of getting ready for budget. And and we basically have been a couple of weeks now, so it's been quiet there at county. Item 9.3, Councillors Committee updates. So Councillor McDonald.
I can do a brief update of QMS and infrastructure at the moment. So we did have discussions about the road in Elora being Metcalf. And so when the second part went down, they had their cameras down looking and could see that it was also disintegrated, I think was the word, or collapsed. And so that has all been resurrected and completed. And I think that everyone's pretty happy about it. Other than that, I believe all the reports went to all of council, and just keep in mind that we are the owner, we are the signing authority. So if you could make sure that you look at them, that's great. But everything else was pretty standard with complaints and backflows. And I think along the meeting, we came across where it actually was the lowest amount of incidents. So pretty good. That's about it for that one. And I also have ECDEV, Economic Development and Prosperity Committee. We met last Thursday, and it was a really good meeting. Our clerk updated the committee on governance and procedure and educated all of us in how the rules of council work, our bylaws, our procedures. So that was pretty good, and answered any questions to that. And our CAO presented our strategic plan, what we're following, how we're going into the future, and answered those questions too. So it wasn't a very long meeting. It was more an educative meeting for the newly formed committee. And I really appreciate the staff taking the time to do that, because it helps with moving forward and having a committee understand how we do the things that we do, why we do them going forward, and also how staff can help along the way. And that's it for the two.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Anyone else would like? Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Representing the EDI committee, we had a wonderful meeting. Huge thanks to our CAO and clerk as well for bringing that information to that committee about governance and how the committee works and its structure and how we, the goals that we have. Dan used the language that the future looks bright, which was very exciting for the committee, and they wanted to let us know they appreciate it. They also wanted to say that council's done a lot of work already and set the stage for the EDI committee to do their work, and they're really grateful. And then finally, they wanted us to recognize that they recognize that we are using language like overarching with reference to embedding EDI concepts and language and narrative into everything that we're doing. So they're really grateful for all of that. It was a great meeting, and we'll meet again in the new year. I think I shared the last one with regards to farm safety, that we had our year-end AGM in Drayton or in Alma rather, and it was wonderful. A success, and the committee has got 3 or 4 different things planned for the new year. So I'll be very busy with all those events.
Thank you, Councillor Evoy. Anyone else? Yeah. Councillor Adams?
Yes, I'll give a quick update on the Healthy Communities Advisory Committee. So much the same. Thank you to our clerk who was there giving our new members a good orientation and an overview on governance. For those that might be tuning in and not aware, there are some working groups that have been set up for that committee. We have the Bitzel Park Multi-Use Pad Working Group, the Community Impact Grant Working Group, they're getting busy on those, going through those applications, and the Pure Point Community Working Group. And Pat gave the committee an update on the new renovations at the Elora Community Center.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Anyone else would like to speak to any of their community work? Okay. Thank you for all that. Okay, we'll now move down to item 10, report from Committee of the Whole, December 7th and 8th. Okay, would you like to, we're going to have a recommendation on that. So on.
Yeah, we're gonna do it in pieces.
Yep.
So
So,
the first piece,
yep. So I can speak to that and then we'll
Yeah.
leave. Okay. So the recommendation is that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approve the report from the Committee of the Whole, items 1 through 14, dated December the 7th and 8th, 2023, as circulated. So do we have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Craddock, all those, or any further comments, questions as it relates to that? Okay, all those in favor? So moved. Okay, so we're going to look at item 15 and 16. So I will step out because I declared a conflict on that.
Okay, so now that Mayor Waters has left, I will finish that Committee of the Whole report. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington approve the report from the Committee of the Whole, items 15 and 16, dated December 7th and 8th, 2023, as circulated. I have a mover for that. Councillor Craddock, seconder, Councillor McDonald. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor? Great, that's carried. And now, the surprise twist of events. It's my understanding I'm staying here using Mayor Waters' papers. I don't know how he's organized himself. So there are no delegations. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
So we'll move past item number 11 and we'll go to consideration of reports. And our first report is 12.1, Integrity Commissioner Report on MCI Application 2023-01 and 2023-02. And the report is from John Mascarin, our Integrity Commissioner, and John is joining us virtually. Hello, John. Welcome to the meeting. And I'll let you turn things over to you to present this report.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of council. I'm here to present on the Integrity Commissioner Investigative Report this evening. Let me just say I'm using this opportunity this evening for a little bit of education training purposes. And I'll explain why I'm doing this tonight. I won't take up a lot of your time. I know that you're all very busy and you have a long agenda for this evening, so I don't want to take up a lot of your time. And I will speak to the report. It's going to be different in nature than the reports that I would come forward to council when there's a complaint and an investigation done under the Code of Conduct. In those instances, when I'd be coming in front of you, it would be typically in the situation where there is a finding of a contravention and there's recommendations and council is tasked to make a decision. That is not the case this evening. When there's a report dealing with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, a statute that now the Integrity Commissioner has jurisdiction over, the Integrity Commissioner makes decisions. It's not council that makes the decision. And the Integrity Commissioner merely reports on their findings and whether they will do one of two things. They will either appear before a judge and make an application to seek to impose a penalty on a member of council for the contravention, or not make an application to the court. So it's the Integrity Commissioner that makes the decision, and that's the distinction between an investigative report under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and an investigative report under council's Code of Conduct. Now, the reason I had to write a report on this, because you may ask yourself that question once I go through the report, it's because the Municipal Act itself requires a report to be provided and to be publicly available. So we are actually mandated to write a report, even though there is no finding of contravention. So let me dispel all of the concerns. There is no finding of contravention in this report tonight. Very simply, the report deals with two applications made, one against Councillor Kimberly Jefferson and one against Mayor Sean Waters, both alleging that they have breached the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act by participating and voting in the termite services report that had been put forward to council earlier this summer. There were two corresponding code of conduct complaints filed at the same time that the applications were made. I'll be quite honest, I couldn't tell which one, if the complainant applicant intended to make 4 complaints, 4 applications, or really wanted to make 2 and 2, or really just argue 1 point. It was a little confusing. The applicant did submit 2 code of conduct complaint forms and 2 Municipal Conflict of Interest Act application forms. I summarily dismissed the code of conduct complaints, which were essentially the exact same things that the applicant made with respect to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And there's a provision, and it's cited at the very bottom of page 1 of our report in footnote number 4, where it talks about conflict of interest. All members under the Code of Conduct are said to have to abide by the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. But it says very clearly that just because they may not do that doesn't mean that it's a contravention of the Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct says you have to respect the Municipal Act, you have to respect the Criminal Code, things like that. Doesn't mean that someone can bring a complaint against a member for having breached the procedure bylaw, or for having breached the Criminal Code or the Municipal Act under the Code of Conduct. That would be, in a sense, a collateral attack, which is not permitted. We've tried to cover that off, and yet a complaint still came in against both of the 2 members. We've summarily dismissed those, and we did not have to provide a report. We couldn't summarily dismiss these complaints or applications under the MCA because the Municipal Act itself says that we have to provide a report. So ergo, you have a report in front of you. The allegations, as I've indicated, are similar in nature. Council considered the termite management services contract, which it made a decision on back on September the 25th, decided to award a contract for termite services. And what it did in the contract, in that report, is the corresponding report identified red and blue zones. The allegations here were that Councillor Jefferson fell within the red zone, which would be a zone that would be serviced by the termite services that council itself gave credence to by awarding the contract. And that the mayor was just adjacent to the red zone in a blue zone, and therefore it would inevitably expand at some future time, and therefore it would be a financial interest that he would benefit from and that Councillor Jefferson would benefit from, and therefore they should never have voted on the matter. So we reviewed it. We reviewed it in accordance with our authority under the Municipal Act as Integrity Commissioner. Bill 68 very clearly gave authority to the Integrity Commissioner to look after matters dealing with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. This had not been the case prior to Bill 68 in 2019, but now any elector or a person demonstrably acting in the public interest can file an application with the Integrity Commissioner, who can review. You'll see on page 2 of our report, we considered the standing of the applicant. We believe that the applicant is an elector, therefore had standing. We were a little bit concerned that the applicant did not file within the 6-week period. It appeared to be filed 2 days outside of the 6-week period. For reasons that I will go on, because we did look at the substance of the complaint, we decided for educational purposes to proceed with the complaint and not to dismiss it outright for being out of time. It may be an argument that the applicant could have made that was still within time, because it all depends on when the applicant became aware of the matter. We assume that the applicant had become aware on the date of the meeting, September 25th, and yet the applications were filed with our office on November the 8th, which would have been 2 days outside of the 6-week window. Nevertheless, we did decide to review it. When we reviewed it, we discovered that, and you'll see on Appendix A of the report, there is a map. I'm just going to look at it myself. On Appendix A, there's the red and blue map, which was attached to the consultant's report on September the 25th. And you'll see that Councillor Jefferson's property is indicated as her home is in the red zone. That is incorrect. And the mayor's property is identified in the blue zone immediately adjacent to the red zone. That is incorrect as well. So in one way, the application was completely misconceived. The applications were completely misconceived, as neither one of the properties actually fell within the zones that the applicant claimed that they fell within. So that's an issue. We had also earlier provided advice to Councillor Jefferson, who did reach out to us, and I can disclose this. Typically, everything that we do, including the advice-giving function that we provide to a member of council, is confidential. However, there is an exception that allows us to disclose that in a report under the MCIA. And so we have disclosed that on page 4 of the report, where it said that Councillor Jefferson had reached out to us. She said, look, I'm in this general area, and I live on a street where there is going to be some termite servicing. Do I fall within an area that I'm in danger of having a pecuniary interest? And we answer to her, no. At this point, it's entirely speculative, and you do not have to disclose a pecuniary interest. And I believe Councillor Jefferson, at least partly on our advice, did not disclose a pecuniary interest and participated in the discussion. She did so, again, based on our advice, and the allegation in the application is that she did so wrongfully. Not that the applicant knew that she had made a request for advice and had received it. So on that basis alone, we would have dismissed it. We did consider the report, and as I indicated, we did summarily dismiss the complaints made, but we had to look at the applications. Typically, the way our review works is this. We need to provide procedural fairness to all parties. So we get a complaint or we get an application. We typically disclose the salient facts to the member of council and allow them an opportunity to respond. Once they respond, that response may be shown to the applicant or the complainant, who may have an opportunity to reply. However, the complaint protocol that council has approved, and it's attached to the code of conduct, indicates that if the integrity commissioner believes that they have a full set of facts, the integrity commissioner may proceed and not follow that process. Therefore, we did not follow the process. We felt that we had sufficient facts simply by the applications being filed and the materials that we reviewed and the questions that we asked the members to verify where they actually resided, which again were outside the blue and red zones. So our analysis begins at page 5. You'll see that we talk about pecuniary interest. Every member of council, if they have a pecuniary interest, which means a financial interest, they have to ask themselves this question: does the matter to be voted upon have the potential to affect my pecuniary interest as a member of council? Okay, that's the question that they have to ask themselves. And the financial interest could be direct or indirect. In this case, it was alleged to be direct, that the members owned homes within the red and blue zones. Again, those allegations were incorrect. The applications misidentified the property, and there was no basis to conclude that the members were to achieve any immediate, discernible, traceable financial benefit from having voted to provide termite management services to the red zone. Okay. There are a number of statutory exceptions, however. Even if we had found that the members had a financial interest in the matter, there are a number of exceptions in Section 4 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. There are 11 exceptions. There are 9 specific exemptions, and there are 2 general exceptions. We considered those exceptions, and it is our determination that there are 2 exceptions in Section 4 of the MCIA that apply in this case. And those are Clause 4B and Clause 4J. And you'll see them at the top of page 7 of my report, where I speak about them. There is an exception for a user of a service on terms common to other persons. In my opinion, even if both members had been within the red zone, they would have fallen within this particular exception that applies to any member who's entitled to receive a service that's in common on the terms of any other person who's receiving a service of the municipality. And that's under Clause 4B of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. In addition, and that's a specific exemption, there is also a very general exception in Clause 4J. This is one of the 2 general exceptions, and it's the one that's commonly cited, which is an exception for a member who has an interest in common with electors generally. Now, any member of council and a member of the public, any resident probably listening or watching this, would probably say, an interest in common with electors generally, it must mean every elector in the municipality. And in fact, that's not the case. And you'll see at paragraph 45 of my report, I indicate that the term interest in common with electors generally, interestingly enough, is defined in the Act. And it actually means, it could mean, an interest with every other elector in the municipality. However, if the area of jurisdiction is a much smaller area, then it could deal with only that geographical area. So all of the electors in that particular class. In this view, in this particular case, we viewed the maps and we believe that those areas of impact, the red, the blue areas, were areas that were large enough in accordance with the case law, and I've cited those cases to give some credence to my determination. We believe that it would have been appropriate for the members to have also taken the benefit of that exception. They would have fallen within an area of jurisdiction that had an interest in common with all of the other electors in that particular area. So our findings are, for all of the reasons that I've set out tonight, Madam Chair and members of council, that both Councillor Jefferson and Mayor Waters did not breach the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. That is our ultimate determination. Firstly, they didn't fall within the geographic areas of the blue or the red, so there was a misclassification of the application. 2, the mayor's the application against the mayor was entirely speculative. It said, well, you know, it's inevitably going to extend beyond those. Well, that's purely speculative, and the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act does not engage itself with remote or speculative interests. So on those 2 bases, the mayor would not have been found to have contravened the act. Councillor Jefferson, in addition, had reached out to us and we had given her advice. Typically, we would stand back and say we've provided the advice and Councillor Jefferson followed our advice, so we're not going to review. And then finally, there are two exceptions in Section 4 that we believe are applicable. So for all of those reasons, we arrived at the conclusion that neither Councillor Jefferson nor Mayor Waters contravened the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. We did provide notice to the applicant that we would not be making an application to a judge, which is the remedy, so to speak, when there's a contravention. In the Code of Conduct scenario, what would happen is the Integrity Commissioner would make the report and would provide recommendations. And it's up to council to make a decision whether to impose any penalties or remedial or corrective actions. Under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, there are 5 penalties that may be imposed. They extend from a reprimand to a removal from office and disqualification from office. So there's a broad range and a spectrum of penalties. The Integrity Commissioner can't impose those. Council cannot impose those. The most that can be done is the Integrity Commissioner could say, it is my belief that there's been a contravention of the act, and I'm going to make an application to the court for the court to impose a penalty. And again, the penalties can be quite significant, including removal from office and disqualification for up to 7 years. Significant penalties. So on that basis, we have provided the report to you this evening. I have explained why we provided the report. We have given notice to the applicant that we will not be making an application to the court for all of those reasons. And this report is really only here for council's information purposes. There is no decision for council to make. And in fact, even though there is a recommendation on your agenda tonight for the report to be posted, really, it's not a recommendation. It's a requirement under the Municipal Act that occur. So this report should be made readily available to the public in all future reports. So, Madam Chair and Council, I really do want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you and to speak. I still haven't had the opportunity to do some training and education to you on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which I think is very important. I will be asking the clerk if she can schedule something. So I hope this goes partly towards some of that education and training that's supposed to be offered and some of the public knowledge of the Act and what the standards and requirements and obligations are for members of council. So with that, I will stand down, but I'd be pleased to take any questions that council may have specifically on the report or perhaps more generally as to my reporting and why it has to work this way or why it does work this way. I'd be pleased to answer any questions, Madam Chair, that you or members of council may have. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, John, for that very thorough report on everything that happened and went into the decision you brought to us today. So I appreciate that information. And I do have 2 councillors wanting to ask questions that I know of right now. So I have Councillor Evoy first, then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate the clarity. There's one thing I just want to confirm. If another member does live in a blue zone, is it still exempt or do we need to start at the beginning?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Evoy, that's an interesting question. If another member falls within the blue zone, it may very well be a pecuniary interest. My view and my ultimate determination here, apart from the reasons that both members did not fall within that area, was that they could still take the benefit of one or both of those exceptions under 4B and 4J. So therefore, if another member fell within there, within the blue or red zones, I don't believe that they would have a breach. They wouldn't be in breach of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act if they did vote on the matter.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
To you, Deputy Mayor Wilton. Thank you very much, John, for a wholesome report. Definitely a good education for me. aside from the cost to the taxpayer, because that is where these costs come from, I'm just going to put this out there. And by the way, I really appreciated your case law and support. I'm the ward councillor in Elora. We have a huge termite problem in Elora. My house is currently not in that zone. We have the potential to have a whole council in every zone because the termites are so bad in Center Wellington. Does the whole council recuse themselves? And the pecuniary interest, just to another question, my understanding is it would be if we were financially involved with the contractor that we hired to do the termite eradication. And so there's no financial involvement. So I'm still not understanding why we would have to recuse ourselves anyways.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald, through you, Madam Chair. So let me answer the second question. A pecuniary interest is any time that a member of council may have a financial interest in a matter before council where they're asked to make a decision. In this case, the allegation was this. Again, leave aside for the moment that the applicant misidentified the two properties, but the allegation was council made a decision to award termite management services at I think it was almost $1.4 million to provide services. Those would be services otherwise that possibly these residents would have to pay out of their own pocket. Therefore, the council members in voting for these services to be provided would be financially benefiting themselves because they would be participating in that. So it's not Councillor McDonald, it's not you having a personal dealing with this termite management contractor. It would be the benefit accruing to you from the services that are provided. It would be the same way if council decided to provide flood control benefit to any properties that were suffering from, the riverbank erosion or eradication and flooding to their properties. If there was a large enough area and a council member was in there, it was in that area, they could possibly say, look, I'm the same as anyone else, and therefore I should be available. The pecuniary interest exceptions should apply. But typically, the way it works is if you can benefit in any way financially from something that comes before council, you are to disclose the interest and then to step away. As to your second question, Councillor McDonald, you said, well, potentially every member of council could be implicated because of the termite infestation in Central Wellington, and therefore every member of council could possibly have to declare pecuniary interest. For the reasons that I've just stated, at least in this particular matter, I've indicated that there were at least two exceptions that could apply. So an exception could always apply. For instance, every member of council, because you have to be an elector, has to either own or rent property in the municipality, right, or their spouse. So typically, correspondingly, each member could possibly be impacted by the tax rates that council itself sets. So, for instance, that is one matter that's a matter in that you have a general interest with every other taxpayer in the municipality, because the council sets the tax rate for everybody. And of course, if you're an elector, you probably have property, and so it will impact you. But you have an exception that applies, and that's why it's there. By the way, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act does take into account that there may be situations where a large number of members of council may be disqualified from making a decision because of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. It allows quorum to be reset. Typically, quorum under Section 237 of the Municipal Act says it's a majority of the members of the council. However, in the case of members declaring pecuniary interest and being disqualified from participating in voting, quorum can go down to 2 members. It can't go down less than 2 members, but it can go down to 2 members. If you're less than 2 members, and in the situation that you brought out, let's say there were no exceptions that applied and every member of council was implicated by a matter, then it would be impossible for you to make a decision. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act has thought of that as well and would allow your solicitor to make an application to the court for, let's just call it special dispensation for council to still make the decision, but you would have to apply to court. I had to do that for the first time in my career last term of council in another municipality where 8 out of the 9 members of council had declared pecuniary interest on a large lawsuit that they were all named individually. And so there was only 1 member standing. So I actually had to bring an application to the court to get that approval.
Great. Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments for John? Councillor McDonald?
John, at what point do you consider an application frivolous? Like if it's the same person that files many applications? I know with the ombudsman, they will turn someone away after so many applications and say, okay, this is being frivolous. At what point do you as our integrity commissioner do that or don't do that, or
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McDonald, through you, Madam Chair. That's a really interesting question, and I can't give you a specific number, and I'll tell you why. I was the integrity commissioner in a municipality several years ago. I was just their interim integrity commissioner for a 6-month period while they searched for a full-time person. And at that time, I had received 7 complaints from the same person, each of which I never investigated. I did an inquiry and I assessed each of them and decided that none of them had any merit to proceed. I did receive the 8th one, and I didn't summarily dismiss it, thinking that the person was vexatious or frivolous, even though it did enter my mind because they had filed 7 of them. But I looked at them and decided that even though I didn't proceed with any of those 7 ones that came before, there was at least some logical basis for the person to file them. The 8th one actually had veracity. So I don't think any person who's supposed to do an investigation can just say, you filed 10 complaints, I'm not even going to look at this one. I think the obligation is to at least look at it to see if it has any scintilla of merit. And then does it elevate itself a little bit further? Does it have any reasonable or probable grounds? I believe that's the test. That's the way I've always been guided. So, Councillor McDonald, I completely understand because the taxpayer is paying the freight of this. So if someone comes forward and files 4, 5, 6 complaints, do I just dismiss it? The answer is no, I don't. I believe my obligation is to at least vet it, consider it, review it, whatever wording you want to take, and then possibly summarily dismiss it, which I have done now with 3 complaints, I believe, at the actually, I think it's 4 complaints at your municipality, code of conduct complaints. With respect to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, I'm not sure that I can summarily dismiss it without writing a report. So it would have to come forward for a report. And in that case, I would do what the courts typically do. I would indicate that perhaps I have some reservations about proceeding, as I did in this one. Was it filed within time? And yet I decided I better look at everything else, just like a court does sometimes when they say I would dismiss it on this ground alone. However, if I am wrong on that, I'm also going to make a determination on the other grounds just to make sure I'm covered off, because someone could always challenge this determination in court, or in fact, challenge it with the Ontario Ombudsman, which doesn't cost the applicant any money to do so. They can just file a letter, and yet I have to respond to that because there's a complaint, and the Ombudsman might come a knocking and would want to know, well, on what basis did you make this decision? So there would be a full report. So the answer is, Councillor McDonald, I don't just dismiss them outright. I don't think that's right, and I don't think that's appropriate. I do vet it, and I do consider it, and I have summarily dismissed and terminated complaints for many grounds: abusive process, frivolous, vexatious, not any reasonable probable grounds to conduct a full investigation. It's already, in a sense, been dealt with, perhaps in certain instances. So I have done that on many cases.
Great. Thank you, John. So we do have a recommendation in front of us on this item. The Council of the Township of Centre Wellington post a copy of the written reasons included in the Integrity Commissioner report dated November 16th, 2023 on the Township's website. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Evoy? Councillor Craddock? Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Great. Thank you, John, for joining us this evening, and appreciate your update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. By the way, season's greetings, and thank you again for having us as your Integrity Commissioner. It's our privilege and honor. I wish everyone a healthy and safe holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your help. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
And I will now turn things back over to Mayor Waters, and we'll resume the meeting.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break and we'll come back. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. So we'll move on to item 12.2, designation bylaw 255 Lamont Street, Pierpoint. And we have a report from, is it Deanna? Yes. Oh, and Mariana. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Waters. I just wanted to take an opportunity, actually, since I haven't had a chance yet, to formally introduce our newest member of our Planning and Development Department team, Deanna Maiden. So Deanna is our Senior Development Planner, and she's also working on the Heritage portfolio, so Heritage applications and projects that come in, which is one of the reasons that she's here tonight. So I'll turn it over to her now to present the next report. But we just wanted to officially welcome her and introduce her to the council and to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Waters and members of council. Through you, the report before you is regarding the designation bylaw for 255 Lamont Street in Fergus, otherwise known as the Pierpoint Fly Fishing Nature Reserve. On September 25th of this year, council approved staff's recommendation to state its intention to designate the property. The notice was published as per Heritage Act requirements and no objections were received. The bylaw is attached to the report along with the Heritage Designation Report as prepared by ASI, and staff is recommending that council proceed with the designation by enacting the bylaw.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Walton.
Thank you. Thank you, Deanna. First of all, I'd like to pass along a message from the Pierpoint Neighborhood Group that they would really like to share their appreciation to staff for moving this whole process forward, and they're delighted that this designation is about to happen. So they wanted me to share that this evening. And I think my next question is probably more for Colin Baker. I'm just curious if staff could comment on how this new designation on this property might impact future development for a bypass as it currently states in our transportation plan and our official plan that County Road 29 could potentially be an option for a future bypass. So I just wanted your comments on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton, and through Mayor Waters. So so the master plan, transportation master plan, did identify the need for a bypass around Fergus at some point in the future. So I think in terms of kind of the details of that will be like the precise location of that crossing of the future bypass would be evaluated through a future class environmental assessment process. So that looks at a number of different alternatives, against a set evaluation criteria. Kind of looks at the social, natural environment, technical considerations, economic conditions as well. And, we'll determine kind of a preferred alignment for that bypass at some point in the future. So I'd say that definitely, an important factor to be considered, of course, as part of a future evaluation through that environmental assessment process.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. I think it is important to note that this is really a special and unique part of Center Wellington now. So it's really great to see this designation happening tonight. So thank you for that, Colin and Deanna.
Any other comments, questions from council? Okay, thank you very much for your report. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington confirms the designation of the property municipality known as 255 Lamont Street, Fergus in the Township of Centre Wellington to be a property of cultural heritage value and or interest pursuant to Section 29, Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and that the corresponding bylaw be given 3 readings. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Evoy, any other further comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. We'll move down to item 12.3, Ainsley Subdivision Service Financing Agreement for the reconstruction of Geary Road and sanitary sewer upgrades on Coburn Street. And, hello, Colin.
Hello.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Waters and Council. So just very pleased to report that the Township and James Keating Construction 2004 Limited have agreed to the terms of a service financing agreement for funding the growth-related costs for Geary Road improvements. And this is from Colburn Street to the northern limit of the Ainley subdivision. And then it also includes also a section of sanitary sewer on Colburn Street between Wilson Crescent and Wellesley Street that will be upsized. So go from a 200 millimeter diameter to 300 millimeter diameter in order to service the proposed subdivision. And so just to quickly summarize the agreement, the developer is responsible for front-ending the growth-related costs, just under $3.7 million in advance of tendering the construction contract for the required services. And just a quick summary of what services are going to be installed on Geary Road. So there'll be the extension of the water main that's on Colburn Street currently at the intersection of Geary and Colburn. So that'll be extended into the subdivision. And also curbs, gutters, storm sewers, streetlights. There'll be a multi-use path added to the road cross section on the west side of Geary. There'll be utility upgrades. We've got some hydro pole relocations. We're in Hydro One service area. And the construction of all of the Geary Road improvements is currently planned for next year, 2024. The Colburn Street sanitary sewer upgrades are expected in 2025. We're into detailed design. We'll finish up design in 24 and tender that for the 2025 construction season. So happy to take any questions council may have at this time.
Thank you, Colin. Questions, comments from council? Councilor McDonald.
Do you foresee any problems like around the dump area or the existing housing in the area? Do you see any problems? And I appreciate this going ahead so quickly. This is awesome. Yeah.
Through Mayor Waters, kind of problems? Any
Well, we're going to upsize Wilson and right? And so they have existing sewers. So would they be offline while we do that, or we'll do a bypass or?
Yeah, through Mayor Waters. So yeah, no, it'll be the section on Colburn Street will be, it's a full reconstruction. So it'll be, there's no curbs, there's no storm sewers there now. So there's sections that don't have sidewalks. So, it'll be a full reconstruction, like replacement of the water main, addition to curb and sidewalk on Colburn. So, yeah.
So we already have trucks coming from Storybrooke down Colburn. Mm-hmm. How are we going to deal with all that when we're doing this? Or can we make them go around and not past Salem School? Well, just don't enter, Laura.
Yes, we'll send them through Thunder Bay. Through Mayor Waters. It's challenging, and it's as the construction phases are changing in Storybrooke, their routes have been kind of adjusting as well with the BD line closure too. That impacted their routes. Like typically, their construction route has been using BD line. With BD line back open, I think they'll go back to that route going forward. And having vehicles traveling down Colburn is obviously not ideal. So we'll be speaking to them and reinforcing the proper construction route now that BD line's back open.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank your staff. It's been a very trying November, December, and I want to thank them for all the extra hours they were working too.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Any other comments, questions from council? Okay, thank you, Colin. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a service financing agreement between the Township of Centre Wellington and James Keating Construction 2004 Limit in the respect to the required services on Geary Road and Colburn Street related to the proposed Ainsley subdivision development at 6560 Geary Road. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald. Any other further comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. We'll move down to item 12.4, vendors of record, environmental services. Who will speak to this? Oh, Colin, come back here. Okay, thank you.
Hello. So yeah, just filling in for Brandon. Brandon actually prepared the report before, and this is I'm here on behalf of Jerry Atkinson, our manager of wastewater services. So thank you again, Mayor Waters and Council. So this report relates to establishing two vendors of record. So firstly, John Brooks Company. John Brooks Company is the distributor for the chamber and the pumping system for the low pressure sewer system in Salem. And so we're just looking to get them established as a vendor of record. And then also related to the low pressure sewer system in Salem, kind of our contractor that responds to maintenance issues and repairs, rebuilds of pumps. It's a local contracting company, Cousins and Johnsons. So they are essentially the on-call emergency response also for the low pressure sewer system when there's issues. They've been providing the service, I think since the 1980s, and are, kind of very familiar with the system and its needs and the maintenance of that system. So staff are recommending establishing these two companies as vendors of record.
Thank you, Colin, for that. Comments, questions from council? Okay. We have a recommendation. The Council of Township of Centre Wellington establishes the following vendors as vendors of record to support work related to the Environmental One Corporation low pressure sewer systems. One, John Brooks Company for the purchase of incompatible parts, maintain unserviced or unreserved capacity, design and system modeling. Two, Cousin and Johnson repairs and maintenance of stock of spare maintenance and replacement materials for low pressure sewer systems, LPSS. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, seconder on that. Councillor Adams, any comments, questions? And seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. We'll move down to item 12.5, part lot control exemption bylaw blocks 123, 125, 126, 128, 129, and 131, Plan 61M-251, a report from Brett Sampson. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Waters. Through you, this is a fairly routine part lot control exemption bylaw. You've seen lots of these now. It's for some townhouse blocks in the Storybrooke subdivision on Prestway and Golly Drive. So that is phase 2B. There's a total of 33 townhouse lots involved, and the part lot control division is consistent with the grading plan and the building permits, and complies with all the zoning regs. So we're recommending approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Council, comments, questions for Brett? Okay. Seeing none, we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approves application EX 007-23 and gives 3 readings to a bylaw to exempt blocks 123, 125, 126, 128, 129, and 131 of registered plan 61M-251 from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald. Comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. We'll move down to 12. Sorry?
I would just like to, I missed declaring a conflict of interest. I don't think it's a big deal, but
right.
On the next item,
okay.
12.5.
Yep. Well, you can declare a conflict at any time. So
if I could just declare that MHBC Planning does provide planning services for that particular subdivision.
Perfect. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so we move down to, again, item 12.6, part lot control exemption bylaw blocks 54. Yeah. Okay, I'll start again. Item 12.6, part lot control exemption bylaw, blocks 54 and 56 of Plan 61M-254. We have a report from Brett Salmon.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Through you again, this is another part lot control exemption bylaw that is perhaps a little bit different than what you're used to seeing, but the circumstance here is we've ended up in the Haylock and Youngblood development with lots that have frontage on the extension of Murray Drive in the Haylock subdivision, but in order to create the lots, they need some land from the abutting Youngblood subdivision, designed that way and approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal. So the part lot control exemption bylaw that's before you is to apply to blocks 54 and 56 of Plan 61M-254, and that's in the Youngblood development. And that's to facilitate them being divided and then merged with blocks in the adjacent Haylock development that you can see on the map. Those blocks already exist. So the Haylock lands didn't need a part lot control, but the adjacent lands do. So after the part lot control is passed and registered on title, then the lots can be merged together to create actual building lots.
Thank you, Brett, for that. Any comments, questions from council? Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I apologize. I'm not really understanding. So what was decided at the OLT or LPAT in the past, we're not touching those lands. Okay. Okay.
No,
and by
same lots as created, but in order to create them, it needed a little bit of land from both developments.
Okay. And by approving this, is that going to, trying to think of the right word, ingratiate touching those lands that were deemed by LPAT?
Well, it implements what was approved by LPAT.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from council? Okay. Thank you, Brett. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approves application EX 008-23 and gives 3 readings to a bylaw to exempt blocks 54 and 56 of Plan 61M-254 from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. I'll wait for Councillor Wilton. Welcome back. Okay, so we do item 12.7, update regarding RZ 05-18, 820 St. David Street North. And again, we have Brett in front of us.
Thank you. And I believe the applicant's agent may be sort of standing by on Zoom. And just in case there are any questions that he needs to speak to, I don't think there will be. Council will recall that we delivered a report recommending approval of this application in October of this year. Council had a couple of questions and it was referred back to staff for some further commentary with respect to public notification and a couple of questions about the site plan and the zoning bylaw. So we did go back, and I think we noted at the meeting that we knew at the time that the county had recently circulated a draft plan of condominium for these lands. And so we went back and actually attached the notice. So you can see that in July of this year, neighborhood circulation went out regarding the plan of condominium, describing it in a fair bit of detail, what it was. So again, we believe that is supports our recommendation that there's no further public notice required. And I note that the county received no letters of objection about the application. Similarly, they've also recently circulated a consent application for these properties, which will go to County Land Division in January. And again, I think there's been one comment received. So that deals with the notice part of council's concern. Secondly, there was a question about additional landscaping. So we went back and reviewed the site plan. We looked at an area where we thought it was possible to add some more landscaping, but that would involve eliminating parking stalls. And so we discussed that with the applicant. The applicant responded that they believed that they had sort of the minimum amount of parking that they needed for their development to be market viable. They also noted that they meet or exceed the minimum landscaped open space requirement in the zoning bylaw. So again, we've concluded that it wouldn't be supported to reduce the amount of parking for this project. We can work with the applicant. We're still going through site plan approval to see if there's more opportunities to enhance the landscaping, particularly on the, I'll call it the west side of this property where it interfaces with the gas bar. But the gas bar is on a completely separate lot. And that brings me to the other question that council asked was, are there standards or that deal with the proximity of a residential building to a gas bar? And in my report, I cover that when this application originally came in and it was a residential use, we had the same question. So we did some investigation with the Technical Standards and Safety Authority that are the ones that are responsible for approving gas stations. And they indicated that there is no such recommendation. So our bylaw today, we would not allow a gas station and residential use to happen on the same property in a mixed use development such as this one. But in this case, the gas bar is on a separate property already. So that part of our zoning bylaw doesn't apply. So again, so our recommendation is really kind of affirming the recommendation that we made in October, which is to deem that the modifications don't require further public notice and that we approve the zoning amendment and give 3 readings to the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Brett. And I know you and I have had a little bit of discussion about this site, so appreciate all your information you've been sharing. So I do want to note that I am fully supportive of intensification, and I know it's a more efficient use of land and infrastructure and avoids sprawl. Just with that being noted, I think we still do need to be thoughtful about kind of that equitable quality of housing we're providing for residents of Center Wellington. So I appreciate that our current zoning, if it was the same property, this would be a stretch to get residential on the same property as a gas station, as well as in close proximity to a drive-through restaurant. So I'm just concerned that kind of using a little bit of a line on a lot that makes it a separate property to where the end result is still going to be housing within close proximity of a gas station and the drive-through, which results in like air, noise, light pollution, those types of things. So I know for this particular development is fine and it's going to move forward and that's all good. But I think as we go through updating our OP, our official plan, our bylaws, and maybe the community planning permit system, that we need to be thinking about those types of things in advance so that we can make sure that all housing, no matter what the price point, has access to kind of treed environments and good quality air and less noise and air pollution as possible. So just wanted to make that comment in light of this kind of peculiar situation where we do have this lot line that separates the uses as opposed to distance. So, and if there is anything we can do to create kind of that treed buffer through the final site plan, that'd be appreciated. So, okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, I appreciate the application for sure. And I think you've really answered all the questions. I mean, I look at Elora 2 and all of Center Wellington where there's a lot of residential properties on county roads. There's just a lot. And it is hard, like we're down to minimal land and it's hard to pick and choose where we'll go when. And so I appreciate this here. I echo what Councillor Wilton is saying about it being, you want it in a better community, but I think on county roads, we really don't have much of a say, the way that we've been developing for years. So I just wanted to say thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Councillor Adams.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you. Just wondering if there was any update to conversations with MTO. I believe this building and this location, as well as the new TU, there's no sidewalk, and a sidewalk would have to be approved through the MTO, I believe. And whether those conversations would take place at this time or later at site plan, or if there's any updates there at all.
Regarding that topic, but with respect to this particular site, it is outside of MTO's jurisdiction. So MTO, we're not involved in this particular site. I believe there is sidewalk on this stretch of St. David Street North between Strathallan and Gordon. There is not a sidewalk on Strathallan, but we expect that to be addressed as part of site plan approval.
Any other comments, questions? I have maybe a comment. I think one of the things that happened with the last term of council is they brought forward the sort of the ability to provide housing along these types of stretches. I think that's important for sort of the mixed use along there, because typically we all call them the golden miles. They've been kind of devoid of houses or devoid of residents, and really it's just had commercial after commercial. I think what this will ultimately do is bring sort of the humanity part back to these areas, or allow people to interface a little bit easier. The convenience of having, stores and churches and schools in close proximity along an urban corridor like this, I think, is important, and we're gonna see much more of this. We're obviously going to get some more discussion about MTO in terms of how, and we're trying to plan, obviously, the community to pick up on these things, and I think these are important as we sort of move forward and we try to preserve agricultural land. So, anyways, I appreciate your report. I appreciate your comment, Councillor Evoy.
Apologies. Thank you. Through you, sir. Actually, I just want to kind of add a little bit out. With regards to being equitable with our housing, we are starting to see a bit of a pattern in that area. And I would like to make sure that as we approve more and more infill, that we are very cognizant of not creating a space where all homes look one way or another, and that we offer as much variety as we possibly can in the same space.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evoy. Any other comments, questions from council? Okay. Do we have a move, or we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington deems the modification to application RZ 0518 do not require further public consultation, and that the application RZ 0518 as amended be approved, and the acquired zoning bylaw amendment be given 3 readings. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, seconder on that, Councillor Wilton. Any further comments or questions from council? Okay, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you, council, on that. Thank you for your good comments. We'll move down to item 12.8, 2024 temporary boring bylaw report from Adam.
For you, this report is really housekeeping in nature and is passed annually to authorize temporary boring should the need arise for the township. Staff do not anticipate a need to access any temporary borrowing for 2024. However, it is prudent to have this bylaw in place to facilitate any unforeseen circumstances that may arise throughout the course of the year. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, council.
Thank you, Adam. Any comments, questions from council? Okay. Seeing none, we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington pass a bylaw to establish temporary borrowing for 2024. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor Jefferson, any further comments, questions? Oh, okay. Seeing none. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Adam. And you'll stay there because we're moving down to item, and I know you're all waiting for this, item 12.9, 2024 interim tax levy bylaw.
Thank you again, Mayor Waters. And again, another housekeeping item. This report is being brought forward to establish a bylaw for the interim tax levy requirements to collect taxes and establish the interim due dates for 2024. In large part, this is consistent with what we've put in place for 2023. And again, I'm happy to take any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Adam, for that. Council comment, or I'll read the recommendation and we'll go into that. Recommendation of the Council of Township of Centre Wellington pass a bylaw to provide an interim tax levy for 2024 and to provide for the payment of taxes by installment. We'll do a mover on that. Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Okay, Councillor Adams, comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. We'll move down to item 12.10, Enbridge Gas franchise renewal agreement.
And through you, this report is being brought forward to table a bylaw for 2 readings. This is regarding a franchise agreement with Enbridge Gas and is a renewal of agreement that is in place with the township since 2004. Largely a boilerplate agreement that has been entered into with all municipalities subject to Enbridge services and has been vetted by Township Legal Counsel without objection or need for modification. I'm happy to field any questions that council may have with regards to the report.
Thank you, Adam. Any comments, questions from council? Okay. Ontario Energy Board for approval pursuant to the provisions of Section 9 of the Municipal Franchisee Act, and that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington requests that the Ontario Energy Board make an order declaring and directing that the assent of the municipal electors to the attached draft bylaw and franchise agreement pertaining to the Corporation Township of Centre Wellington is not necessary pursuant to the provisions of Section 9.4 of the Municipal Franchisee Act. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Evoy, any comments, questions? All those in favor? So moved. And Adam's still there, so we'll move down to 12.11, Community Emergency Preparedness Grant Application.
Thanks again, Mayor Waters. And through you, this report is being brought forward to seek council authorization for both myself and or CAO Wilson to execute an agreement and commit to a contract regarding the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant, if successful with our application. The township's application is geared towards the procurement of automated external defibrillators for township facilities and emergency shelter supplies. If successful, the township can anticipate senior level government funding of approximately $41,600 in support of these acquisitions. And again, I'm happy to field any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Sorry, I just curious, when you say emergency preparedness supplies, what does that include and where is that kept?
Certainly, I will take a crack at it. And if it needs any support, I'll defer to our Managing Director of Community Services, Pat Newson. But effectively that pertains to cots, blankets, hygiene kits, as required in the case of an emergency. If we have to open up a warning center and we have people housed locally in the event of an emergency, most likely at our recreation facilities, either the JECC or the Fergus Community Sportsplex.
Oh, thank you, through you. I'm just looking again for a little clarity, how often those items are checked and where they are kept insofar as cleanliness of the actual mattresses and blankets and things like that.
I think with that question, I will defer to Pat Newson.
Thanks for the question, through you, Mayor. So they're not mattress cots. They're like a nylon type cot. The blankets are wrapped in plastic. They're kept clean. We are actually out of them all now. So we've given them out for a variety of reasons over the years. So this will replenish that stock. And we're sort of a first defense. And then if it's an extended shelter or there's so many hours before the Red Cross can get there, and then they also bring trailers of supplies that they carry. So we're sort of the first line. We have enough equipment for an emergency, and then hopefully they can get here to support our not reception. We have often just a reception area, but any type of what's the shelter? Thank you. Any shelter services we require. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, so this whole grant actually has helped us realize we do need to check our inventory on a regular basis. And so that with this, we will continue to do that.
Councillor McDonald and then Councillor Adams.
Through you, Mayor Waters. This is excellent. We learned all about this in our emergency management planning, So I'm just curious. So this is a grant that we're utilizing. Is there any supplemental grants? So because our safe communities and our emergency management is really implemented by county, Wellington County, do they have any funds we can draw on as well to maybe top it up? Anything we might need to fulfill the stock?
I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, no, while we do work in concert with the county for our emergency planning, these are items that we like to have on hand and in stock. So through this provincial opportunity, this affords us an opportunity for a funding source that would otherwise be ancillary to what we would have to use from a tax supported perspective. So I think this is really our outlet at the local level. I think, as Pat had alluded to, there's always other agencies involved in emergency preparedness that will help support, but I think this really gets us to that first phase.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. My question was kind of related to your last comments there, Adam. So if successful, great. I'm curious if there's a chance of being unsuccessful, and then is there then a need this coming year to make these purchases, and would that have been budgeted in our current budget coming up?
Through you, Mayor Waters, and great question, Councillor Adams. We haven't got funding for these supplies within our existing operating budget. However, we do have contingency funds available in the event of emergencies that we could rely on should they become an emergent purchase requirement.
And just to add to that, is with respect to the AEDs, they are all maintained, they're battery checked, and there is a supplemental budget each year to make sure that those are still working in order. So that is all taken care of. However, this is for additional AEDs at other sites.
Any other comments, questions from council? Okay. We have a recommendation of the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the Managing Director of Corporate Services and/or Chief Administration Officer to execute an agreement and commit to the contract regarding the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant if successful with their application. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald. Any other further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So move. Good luck with that grant. We'll move down to item 12.12, improvements to Highway 6 related to future development plans. And we have Colin Baker to speak to this.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Waters and members of council. So just got a bit of a preamble to go with the report. So bear with me for a couple of minutes here. Okay. All right. So as council is aware, growth forecast adopted by the county through OPA 120 project significant growth within Centre Wellington. Population increase from 34,000 in 21 to 58,000 in 2025, with a doubling of jobs, growing from 12,000 jobs to about 25,000 jobs during the same time frame. So the county has identified that the township needs approximately 400 hectares of additional urban service land to accommodate this growth. So
So I've attached a couple figures just to put some of that growth into context around the Fergus area and Highway 6 and the limits of our connecting link. So we do have a Highway 6 connecting link that essentially goes through through Fergus, and we have certain things that we're able to do within that connecting link in Fergus. We have the ability to, maintain those roads, and we look after maintenance. We have maintenance responsibilities for the road, including snow plowing, pothole filling, this sort of thing. But MTO has still certain jurisdictions, certain approvals. We can't really change intersections easily. Signal timing, that sort of thing. That all requires MTO approval. If we added a turning lane or moved the curb, we would need MTO approval within that connecting link. Outside the connecting link, and just visually, it's Side Road 19 to the north on St. David Street. To the south, it's just south of McQueen. Just around McDonald's, basically, is where the connecting link limit is to the south on Tower Street. And then so outside of our connecting link is wholly MTO jurisdiction. So just to get an idea of that, and so kind of both mostly outside of our connecting link within MTO's jurisdiction, there's lands with developer interest. So the county had a report back in April that kind of identified lands where either a developer or the owner were interested in getting those lands into the urban area. So I've shown those lands. They were published back in April in a report to the Land Division Committee. And so I've just taken that mapping and put it on attachments 1 and 2. Just to provide some context then these are lands that have been requested. I'm also showing the South Fergus secondary plan area, the battery storage facility area. So just showing the whole property on this map as well, just to demonstrate that there are lands with development interest, and then also lands within the urban boundary too that have active planning applications. So another part of this story that just came to light just recently is the MTO has issued a notice of study commencement and preliminary design for intersection improvements at Highway 6 and Second Line, and Highway 6 and Wellington Road 22 and 8th Line. So we've got a copy of the notice of study commencement as attachment 4 to this report. And so really, there's a lot going on. We've got the development side of things. We have intersection improvements. We're evaluating. So with each planning application, we're kind of examining Highway 6 and the needs for Highway 6 for each application. So what's become clear is that staff, feel that a clear vision of the transportation system should be established through an assessment of kind of existing and future mobility needs on Highway 6, and how we can facilitate future access to these development lands. So we're recommending a transportation study that should address short-term, medium-term, and long-term improvements based on planned development applications to ensure the operational functionality and safety of the road network. So instead of kind of each application at a time, staff feel it would be more efficient if we looked globally at Highway 6. And, if we know the development areas that are coming, actually put together a transportation plan to service the development that, can be phased over time, but have a clear vision and plan for Highway 6. So we're also suggesting that a better understanding of the Fergus bypass needs to be established. Through the transportation master plan, we do know that the connecting link through Fergus will be over capacity by 2041. And with no ability to widen Highway 6 through the historic downtown core, a bypass or alternative routes around Fergus will be required at some point in the future. And so staff would like to approach MTO and involve the County of Wellington at the same time to start examining these issues together. Again, instead of looking at each development and see how it impacts the existing system, try to take a longer term view of Highway 6 and come up with a plan today that will inform improvements and facilitate development in the future. So in terms of next steps, staff will be providing comments on the proposed intersection improvements. They've got Saturday, December 23rd as the deadline for comments. So we'll be preparing comments and submitting those. So I just have some comments there in the report. We heard this a lot through the Transportation Master Plan in 2018 and 2019. There's a strong feeling in the community that a roundabout potentially at Second Line and Highway 6 might be appropriate. And so that's part of the recommendations of this report. If council, supports a roundabout, that would be, I think, great input to go as part of that feedback to MTOs through this class environmental assessment study process. Also, we need to consider the upgrades, future upgrades to Highway 6 too. There'll be new intersections, road widenings. It's likely that the section of Highway 6 south of Fergus will be more than 2 lanes currently, right? So we need to plan for those. We need to plan for how active transportation kind of gets worked into that to make it like a multimodal corridor. So there's the surface works. There's also what's going on underground in terms of utilities. We're going to have water mains crossing there. There'll be sewers likely crossing the highway. So it would be nice to all this is known now. So we should, in my mind, be developing plans to be organized and be ready for this when the upgrades come. So, and I note that, staff have requested a meeting with the Minister of Transportation through the Roma conference in January. I don't believe we've heard back on that yet. So hopefully we're successful with that. And of course, we can raise these issues at that level, at that meeting if we're successful in getting the meeting. And, really, again, the goal is just to, staff feel strongly that it's time to chart a path forward on the improvements to the transportation network in Fergus, including Highway 6. And, I'm happy to respond to any questions council may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for that excellent report. Yes, I'll start with Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. I heard loud and clear at our town halls about Highway 6 and Second Line for sure. So this is kind of exciting. Highway 7's been going in since I was 10 years old. So I don't think they're any further ahead than this. So this is good. Will the MTO hold public meetings down the road? Have you seen that? And I fully believe we'll get an answer to our delegation. It might be last minute, but I believe we'll get one.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor McDonald, and through the mayor. I'm not sure if they're going to hold public meetings. I'm just looking through their notice here right now. They have established a website that's up and running. I did check it out last week, and it's www.highway6wellingtonroadsecondline.com is a website, and there's no unfortunately no reference to like future public information sessions or public consultation beyond their website in this notice. Perhaps something we could follow up with the project team on and get a sense of whether there's going to be public information centers and report that back to council.
That would be great.
Yeah,
I do see the engineers' names listed too, so that's good.
Reach out to them for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Aflin?
Thank you through you, sir. Thank you. That was really good. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more. Admittedly, there's lots I don't know that you can speak to. So if I'm out of line, please feel free to school me. When I hear future, I want to think about, I'm grateful you mentioned active transportation, but then not just mass transit options, new options for mass transit that, we might be able to foresee down the road. I think it's great to hear about all the widening of highways, but we also need to plan for the time when it's not all about the thousands of cars and different options that will be brought in. And I don't know how much we can plan for that. In addition, I look to whether or not parking options with regards to future growth, given that right now cars still are a big thing, whether or not we'll be looking at those kinds of options as well. So I really look forward to learning as much about those three things: active transportation, parking, and mass transit options going forward. Is that something you'll be able to look at, or?
Yeah, no, great comments. And I think part of the challenge with Highway 6 as well, there's a 14-meter setback that MTO reserves on private property. That's basically excluded for any sort of parking or development. So it's as we're looking to kind of change the feel of these roads, to make it more kind of built form closer to the sidewalk or multi-use path, it becomes a challenge with the 14-meter setbacks, which are really there to reserve, I think, for future expansions of the highway. And that's why if for the Fergus bypass, if it's depending on where that connects, is there a need for more than 4 lanes north of Fergus, immediately north of Fergus, if there's a bypass further to the north? So all these, there's a lot of questions. MTO is also we have an example where they've required noise mitigation measures along residential interface. So we've got a large berm within the 14-meter setback and a noise fence on top of it. So again, there's another vision that we have through precedent. And again, not sure if that's going to be part of future comments and requirements as we grow north and south ends of Fergus. So.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Colin, for the report. I was really excited to see this report. Fergus bypass obviously is a really important topic for our community and has been talked about for a while and will continue to be so. So it was great. There's a lot of good information in here, and I'm very supportive of all the staff recommendations in the report and the conversations that you're looking to take on. I don't think that the Wellington Road 22 intersection improvements can come soon enough. The amount of fatal accidents happening at that intersection is something that I think needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. And I know that's something that's been advocated by MPP Arnott as well. So very good to see this and very supportive of all the recommendations. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Walton.
Thanks, Colin. I echo everybody's comments. Just curious on the timelines. Do you know of any kind of hope of when conversations might happen around Fergus bypass, or is that a get something started this year and then reopen transportation master plans next year, or any kind of ideas around timelines would be appreciated?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton, and through the mayor. So, I think we need to have some dialogue with MTO and the county to really kind of map out the process and have an understanding of the process. We've got three levels, kind of all with an interest, all with a stake in it. So I think having an understanding of even who the proponent is, right? Is it MTO? The Morriston bypass, it's MTO is actually the proponent for that project. So, what the path is forward, I think that's where we need to initiate the discussions. And of course, as we learn more, we'll provide updates to council as we move along. Yeah.
Any other comments from council? I'll provide a little bit of an update. A couple of weeks ago, I was at an event where the Premier Ford was at. Minister Sakaria, who's the Minister of Transportation, was there as well. I had the opportunity to join the, I'll call it the conga line in terms of meeting the Premier, and I pointedly introduced myself to him and asked the Premier, I introduced myself as Sean Waters from Centre Wellington, Mayor, and indicated that we were having an issue with MTO in terms of sort of we have developments ready to go and we're having issues of access to Highway 6. He basically, at that point, pointed to someone, asked them to come over and talk to me. Happened to be the Minister of Transportation, Minister Sakaria. Minister Sakaria took my phone number and said, we will have an appointment and we'll meet with you. Whether it be part of the delegation or he's agreed that we, and he texted me on that as well, that we're going to meet with them. I did indicate there are issues of MTO and issues of bypass as well. So we're definitely on the radar, and it was a good thing that we had, or at least I had the opportunity to have a chat with them. So just to provide you an update there as well. So, okay, if there's not any other questions, do have a mover for this? Councillor Adams, seconder on this. Councillor Wilton, comments, questions? Nope. Okay, all those in, I have to read that recommendation. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington direct staff to engage Ontario Minister of Transportation's discussion on a collaborative process on the future design of Highway 6 to the service population and employment growth in the Fergus urban area. And that council supports the inclusion of active transportation facilities, including sidewalks, multi-use paths within the section of Highway 6 corridor located in the Fergus urban area. And that council encourages Ministry of Transportation to consider a roundabout design for Highway 6, a secondary line, and Wellington Road 22, 8th line intersection improvement as part of MTO's class environmental assessment and review of alternates. So we had a mover, we had a seconder. Any further comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, so move. Thank you, and thank you for that good report. Okay, so we're going to move down to item 12.13, short-term accommodation, STA, and bed and breakfast establishment. A report from Carrie.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters. At the June 26th council meeting, council asked staff to review best practices from other municipalities and report back to council with recommendations for Centre Wellington to potentially have a program in place by May the 1st, 2024. Staff has reviewed a number of bylaws, spoken to various municipalities ranging in populations and the township prosecutor to determine what regulations, if any, they have in place and their general approach to regulating short-term accommodations. Many of the municipalities that have adopted bylaws to regulate short-term accommodations appear to have done so in response to significant issues related to noise, parking, garbage, nuisance, vandalism, etc., where there was a need to lessen the conflicts between permanent residents and visitors. The report tonight outlines key findings and common themes many municipalities have implemented depending on the level of regulation and enforcement established. Staff is seeking council's direction with respect to the options set forth in the report. And the facts have been provided in the report respecting the existing enforcement tools available, along with complaint information regarding our current short-term accommodations. As the options in this report are contemplated, council will need to decide whether comprehensive licensing regulations for short-term accommodations are needed at this time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carrie. Comments, questions? Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. When I saw this on the agenda, I was kind of looking for, I thought we'd be given some options, but maybe we just need more time, I think. So my question is, I will be supporting option 2. Do we know at this point what the financial cost would be to implement this with what you've seen?
Well, I'll maybe defer that to Adam, the Managing Director of Corporate Services.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor McDonald, and through you, Mayor Waters. We don't have a really good line of sight in terms of what the financial implications of option 2 would be. But if we were to use the municipal parking strategy as a proxy to kind of define what engaging a consultant might be, we would be looking at somewhere in the vicinity between $50,000 and $100,000, because it would involve inventorying, defining best practices, significant public consultation, and all that other good stuff, which is kind of in alignment with what our municipal parking strategy has encompassed. So we would be looking somewhere in that vicinity, I would think, in terms of an expense, which we currently haven't got budgeted, but we do have capacity within the general capital reserve should this be an option that council wishes to pursue for 2024.
So we've already had a group of short-term rentals come forward that has done a list for us. So I'm not sure that we need to do that type of consultation. And I thought we had already discussed 100,000 for this. No? Okay. Then we didn't. All right. Thank you.
Through Mayor Waters, so to date, council has given direction for staff just to purely investigate. With no budget provided. So I think with this report, we've investigated, we have some options available to council, and to move forward with option 2, for example, there's a financial implication involved at this point. So staff are looking for that direction at this point to move beyond the investigatory stage.
Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I'm thinking, like, if we're going to discuss like option number 2, and we've also been discussing how in 2024 we're going to be doing a tourism master plan, I'm wondering if we can somehow bundle this in there, because I'm seeing both of them having a lot of public consultation taking place, and then also the Airbnbs are a large part of the tourism as well. So, and when you start talking about parking and garbage and noise, like everything there that's impacted by the Airbnbs is also going to be impacted by the tourism. I'm just wondering if we could maybe refer this back to work with the tourism master plan and see what all comes out of that together, so that we're working together to do everything instead of pulling everything out piecemeal.
Okay. Any comments, questions from this side? Okay, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Yeah, I'm also looking at option 2, but maybe more for reasons of looking at the big picture in terms of if we have too many Airbnb or short-term accommodations in a neighborhood, we start to lose that long-term rental options for residents of Center Wellington as well, and also just getting into a situation where you might not actually have neighbors anymore within segments of our community, which I think is not great from a community health perspective. So I am interested more in option 2 for those reasons, but also for the ability to potentially in the future implement a municipal accommodation tax, which would provide another source of revenue for the community and have tourism pay for tourism to some extent. So some of those issues I think are important to consider as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilton. Councillor Adams.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of my colleagues' points made there. And I'd be interested just to hear from staff as well. We do have the parking strategy. We have a bunch of projects that we're approving and the upcoming budget. I'm just wondering about like staff capacity and obviously the financial implications. I like the idea of potentially looking at it with tying it into the economic development master plan, the whole tourism paying for that. So I'm just kind of, interested in hearing a bit of feedback from staff on that.
Thank you. And through Mayor Waters, we're very mindful of staff capacity on this as well. And it's staff's intent to try to prioritize recommendations of the parking strategy in early 2024 as an initial priority. But some of the ideas that have come to the table here today, like trying to pair this with the tourism strategy, we can try to do that. I would just ask for some leniency in terms of being able to potentially hire different consultants, but maybe having the project run in parallel would maybe make more sense, because you're looking for maybe more of a legal planning expertise for short-term rentals, where the tourism strategy may be some other type of expertise. So we can try to best fit the project in lines with what's happening in 2024, just recognizing that parking is at least at this point our first priority.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, yeah, that you just addressed my concerns, so thank you on that. And I'm wondering though, like if it's just recommendations maybe that the consultant can work with to come out of the economic development master plan that then potentially could be used by a future consultant potentially in 2025, that we can work to budget with once we have the parking strategy and everything undergo. So like I'm leaning towards option 2, but kind of based on the conversation we have, that we realize that it's like a slower process, and then recognizing capacity and some of the other competing priorities.
Yes, and thank you for that comment. And through Mayor Waters, your assumption is correct in that if we were to take on parking initiatives, short-term rental initiatives, and a MAT tax, those are all areas that affect the same area of our staffing, our capacity, and our budget. So staff would like the opportunity to see what the impact would be on our resources and our ability to follow through on that level of service, looking at this at more of a macro level if we were to take on all at once.
Sir Evoy?
Thank you, sir. Through you. As always, certainly to date, I love everything that my colleagues are sharing, and I'm really excited about it. Mine's more about a question. We recognize that the short-term accommodation is causing some strife within our community. And we have, at this point, although I recognize parking does need to be a priority, and I'm going to stand by that, but this now means we have at least one, potentially 2 more seasons where we are left without really any direction. And I'm feeling a little concerned about that, given the parking situation, given the growth, and given what we already know has been happening with our STAs. I'm glad that we are coming up with a plan for 2 or 3 years from now, but I wonder, is there a way for us to implement an interim or short-term plan? Because it's a problem, specifically in Elora, definitely in both communities, but it's a problem. And I hate to look at our neighbors and say, sorry, we have nothing for you at this time. So is there any happy medium there?
Thank you for the question, and sorry to other staff for hijacking the conversation. But I don't think this is going to take 2 to 3 years. We want to try to tackle a high-level strategy for parking early next year, and then we can try to dedicate some time to this after that. So I don't think it's going to be 2 to 3 years to roll this out.
If you want to stay on there, so that'd be great. Well, through the mayor. So do we have any plan for this coming tourist season? Because last season we faced some challenges. Do we have any? Is there a way to do anything? I guess I'm a big girl. If we say no, there isn't anything we can do right now, I'll hear that.
Through Mayor Waters, you'll see some of the recommendations from a parking perspective come forward in January, and we intend to start working on those right away to get as much as we can in place for the next tourist season. Will there be, if council proceeds with this report, will there be short-term rental accommodation controls in place for next season? No.
Through you, Mayor Waters. So I've been visiting a lot of tourist towns in Southern Ontario. A few weeks ago, it was Niagara-on-the-Lake. My bill, I showed it to the CAO. I've showed it to some others. The municipal occupancy tax definitely comes to light. Councillor Wilton highlighted that as well. That offsets the costs for the tourism. And I'm happy to pay it when I go to another town. I'm using their services. So I would really like to look at that as part of the overall. So just what my colleague here, Councillor Jefferson, was saying about the tourism. And, you know, I can see us going down the path where we're going to come to the point where we're going to need just tourism services, client service that way in our township. But I think this would be a good starting point with 2 bylaws. So falling under the parking bylaw, you know, noise, I know that's at county level and we're using OPP for those services. But if we can do our own bylaw, that would be great. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, through you. Thank you, Mayor. I think just a comment that I think we have to be mindful again of like how many priorities we're putting on staff. Like we need to prioritize that. Like we put a big emphasis on staff and staffing capacity. And we're not doing, I do believe that we kind of have started a short-term plan. We have just approved an additional bylaw officer in the upcoming budget. And so, you know, there could be more to do in terms of like the bylaw enforcement and noise and stuff, which actually is a local bylaw. But so I do think we do have a short terms. And again, I agree with all the comments, but I think this just has to be a very like phased in, and the timing has to be right on this.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Craddock.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you. I like option 2, but I have questions about step 1 with the extensive public consultation and generating the inventory. Is there a process in which we can have any short-term accommodations mandated to have to register, and then that would build our inventory for us? And maybe with no registration, there could be a penalty if they don't.
Through you, the only way, I mean, you can ask for volunteer registration because we, as Councillor McDonald said, we do know where a number of them are. But in order to regulate them, you need a bylaw. And what I've learned through the research that I've done is that no one passed a bylaw before they had other steps in place. And one is public consultation with the general public as well as the people that own these establishments. So that was made clear that the consultation has to happen, and you need a broad picture of what are offered and what the complaints are. Because we don't, other than a handful, we have not received any complaints or any issues with the short-term accommodations. So from our point of view, we're not aware of any issues or any problems, with the exception of maybe a few. But so that public consultation is kind of necessary in order to grasp what we want to regulate, how aggressive we want to be with the regulation, and how aggressive we want to be with the enforcement. So to me, that's kind of the starting point is gather the information, get the data, find out where they are, and gather the information, and then come back to council. I think I said in my report at various stages, so that you'll know where we're at, and then I can get direction from you, or staff can get direction from you as to how aggressively we are going to monitor, how aggressively we're going to license. Many of these municipalities insist on neighborhood agreements, rental agreements, very detailed application forms, inspections. The inspections alone could add a great deal of work to our enforcement, in that there has to be fire inspections, building inspections, so parking site plans. What other municipalities have anticipated and actually had to go through it's quite an extensive process. So in order to get that information, you have to regulate them, and I think in order to regulate, you need the foundation to do it properly.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. So the complaints I've had pretty much coincides, I think, with what you're seeing. I've only had 2 solid complaints. One mediated things themselves and the other one sold their property. So that's it. That's all I've had. So if we're only having a handful, I think, we can take the time and do this well and do it right under your direction, Carrie, for sure. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. My concern is also where the stage we are at now, if we have X number of short-term rentals, but how it may exponentially increase with the tourism, because there's a large push now for grants and everything to do tourism on the shoulder seasons and coming up with winter escapes, and as different businesses develop and have more rooms for rent and more activities going on, tourism isn't going anywhere from here. It's not to decrease in this area at all. So I can see that the short-term accommodations would be increasing, and it's just something that I think that we need to get into place now, but we also have to consider different aspects as well that influence the short-term accommodations, and with licensing and what we can share between staffing, I guess, jobs and different things that are that way for budget concerns. So.
Thank you, Councillor Jefferson. Any other comments, questions? My comments on this would, I'm definitely leaning towards option 2. I think there's definitely a need to look at this, but do it in a very thoughtful, best practices way. There's obviously communities which are similar in size to us and are growing, and also have tourism issues. And I think we need to approach this in a very kind of more methodical way, and have staff and public input, as well as the owners and operators input, and do in a way that we're not just putting in a bylaw for the sake of putting in a bylaw, but it's something which is meaningful and something which will do the job. I think if we sort of just go at this very quickly and get something in place, I think we'll be very disappointed. I think the public would be disappointed with us as well, in terms of not, and my experience insofar with this beautiful council here is that you're very, you put good thought into things, and I think in terms of a bylaw, I think we need to approach it in that respect, and also respect the fact that our staff can only do so many things. So we do have some priorities, and this will obviously at the time be a priority. So we want to do it in a very good way. So that's my thoughts on that. So what I can gather here, we're sort of leaning to 2 here. So is that okay? So I'll read that. Thank you. I'll read that. Number 2, undertake a multi-step process with reports to council at various stages. Step 1, complete an extensive public consultation process and generate an inventory of active short-term accommodation. And step 2, use the information data collected to draft a licensing bylaw and formulate a strategy, including financial implications, to regulate and enforce short-term accommodations. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, a seconder on that. Councillor Jefferson, any comments, further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you for that. Good conversation. Okay, so we're going to move down to 12.14, 2024 budget bylaw. Report from Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. And through you, this report, again, pretty much housekeeping in nature, and is the last step in establishing the 2024 budget for the township. Staff, our finance staff have made all requisite changes stemming from the budget deliberation sessions with council and compiled the necessary information to inform the bylaw, which is attached to your report. I just wanted to thank you all for your participation and guidance throughout the budget planning process, and I look forward to hitting the ground running in 2024. Happy to field any questions that council may have with regards to the report.
Sorry, comments, questions from council? Okay, seeing none, we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the bylaw to enact 2024 budget. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? So move. Thank you. Okay, we'll move down to item 14.1, a bylaw to authorize a franchisee agreement between the Corporation and Township of Centre Wellington and Enbridge Gas Inc. And I guess we don't have any, sorry, a recommendation that bylaw 2023-91 be read a first and second time and signed by the mayor and clerk and the corporate seal affixed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor Wilton, any further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Okay, we'll move down to item 15, bylaws. First bylaw, 2023-92, a bylaw to designate the lands at 255 Lamont Street to be of cultural heritage value or interest. Next bylaw, 2023-93, a bylaw to exempt certain lots within Plan 61M-254, Township of Centre Wellington from part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. Next, 2023-94, a bylaw to exempt certain lot within Plan 61M-251, Township of Centre Wellington from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act, Priest Way and Gully Drive. Next, 2023-95, a bylaw to establish the fees and charges of various services provided by the municipality and to repeal bylaws 2023-01, 2023-06, and 2023-29. Next, 2023-96, a bylaw to establish temporary borrowing for 2024. Next, a 2023-97, a bylaw to provide an interim tax levy and to provide for the payment of taxes by installments. Next, 2023-98, a bylaw to amend the Township of Centre Wellington zoning bylaw 2009-045 as amended to change the zoning of certain lands from C2 to C2 76 for 820 St. David Street North. Next, the 2023-99, a bylaw to authorize the mayor clerk execute a service financing agreement between the Corporation and Township of Centre Wellington and James Keating Construction Limited. Next, 2023-100, a bylaw to adopt the estimates of the Corporation of the Township of Centre Wellington for the year 2024. Recommendation that bylaws 2023-92 through 2023-100 be read a first, second, and third time and pass, signed by the mayor and clerk and the corporate seal affixed. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor Wilton, any comments or anything like that? No? Okay. Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor. I just out of curiosity, a question for the clerk. I see we have 100 bylaws this past year. Is that, I'm just kind of curious, is this a heavy year of bylaws? Is this about average?
This is more than usual.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Curious. Thank you.
Motions where notice have been given. Confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to confirm the actions of council. There's a recommendation that bylaw 2023-101 to confirm the proceedings of council and in its meeting held December 18, 2023 be introduced a first, second, and third time and passed in open council. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Evoy. Any other comments, questions? No. All those in favor? So moved. And before I adjourn and ask that, I would like to thank everybody in this room and across the ethos here for this wonderful year. We've had a very exciting year. Thank you for pointing out all the work that we've done, and I would like to thank council and staff thoroughly for working together and making my job a lot easier. And it's been wonderful working with you folks. Look forward to this coming year. It's it's been a tough year for many people, but I feel very optimistic that we're coming into some better times. So, and we will continue. I know from council, and I've talked to you all many times, and I know our goal as a council is to continue to do good works along with staff. And we want this to be a very good community. So I appreciate all your efforts and appreciate all those folks that are watching at home, all three of you. And yes, and I want to wish you the best of holidays and a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you all in the new year. Thank you again. Now the confetti. So do I have we're going to adjourn. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor McDonald, seconder on that. Councillor Jefferson, any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. And thank you to the press.
And thank you to the